Lieutenant Jordan Hayes stood in front of the tall mirror, adjusting the collar of his formal uniform for the 5th time. His hair was neat, his boots were polished, and the nervous sweat on his forehead had been wiped away at least 3 times. Already, this is it, he whispered to himself. First contact. Don't mess this up. Today was the first official meeting between humans and the Volcar Union, a powerful alien race known for their strength, honor, and long history among the stars. The Volcar were tall, strong, and had large curved horns on their heads, symbols of wisdom and leadership. For humans, this was more than just a meeting. It was history in the making. Hayes was not a fighter or a general. He was a language officer, trained in alien communication and culture. But because he was good at making friends and staying calm, Earth's leaders had chosen him to be part of the welcome team. Lieutenant Hayes, "They're ready for you," said Commander Liu, stepping into the room. Hayes took a deep breath and nodded. All right. Time to shake hands with a space rhino. Commander Liu didn't smile, but Hayes thought he saw a small twitch in the corner of his mouth. Liu handed him a small data pad. Remember, the Volcar have strict customs. No touching the horns. No sudden movements. Speak clearly. Bow once, then stand still. Got it, Hayes said, even though his stomach was starting to twist like a pretzel. The Volcar ship was massive, shaped like a shining crescent moon. It floated just above Earth's atmosphere, and Hayes was taken there in a small shuttle, along with a few senior diplomats. Inside the alien ship, everything was dark metal and glowing blue lights. The air was warmer than Earth's, and there was a low hum in the walls that Hayes could feel in his chest. The Volcar guards watched silently as the humans entered. Then she arrived. Ambassador Curl of the Volcar was even taller than the others, her horns long and polished, her deep violet robes flowing behind her like a cape. Her skin was a pale silver and her eyes glowed softly like stars. Hayes tried not to stare, but it was hard. She looked like a walking statue carved by a master. Ambassador Curl, said Earth's ambassador, Mr. Tamora, stepping forward with a respectful bow. On behalf of humanity, we thank you for this meeting. Curl tilted her head. And we welcome you to the halls of the Volcar Union. May your words bring truth, and your presence bring peace. Hayes was introduced last. He stepped forward, bowed just as he was taught, and looked up at Coral with a nervous smile. I'm Jordan Hayes, language officer and, fan of peaceful contact. She raised an eyebrow. A fan? I mean supporter. Sorry. I speak 6 alien languages. But I still trip over English sometimes. Curl did not smile, but her eyes seemed amused. Then came the moment Hayes had practiced, the gesture of goodwill. Each species had their own way to show respect. For humans, it was usually a handshake or a hand on the chest. For the Volcar, the gesture was different. He had read that they placed a hand over a glowing spot between their horns. If invited as a way to show great trust and unity, but Hayes didn't wait for an invitation. Trying to show confidence, he stepped closer and reached up gently to the space between Curl's horns. A soft blue light glowed there. He pressed his palm to it. Everyone gasped. Curl's eyes widened. She made a sharp, surprised sound, half gasp, half growling, stepped back quickly. Hayes froze, his hands still in the air. Oh no, he whispered. What did I just do? Earth's ambassador dropped his datapad in shock. One of the Volcar guards stepped forward, but Corell held up a hand, stopping him. For a long moment, no one said anything. Hayes cleared his throat. I thought that was the friendly gesture, like a high five. Corell slowly walked back toward him. Lieutenant Hayes. Among the Volcar, that gesture is sacred. It is not done in public, and it is never done without invitation. Hayes swallowed hard. So, did I just insult you? No, Curl said. You just proposed a bonding. A what now? Life bond? It is like a partnership, a union, an agreement to join minds and purposes. She tilted her head. Among our people, such a bond is not easily broken. Hayes looked around. The room was silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. I'm so sorry, he he said quickly. I didn't mean I was just trying to be respectful. Corell stared at him for a long time, then turned to the Volcar council members. They whispered among themselves in their deep, humming language. Finally, she looked back at Hayes. You may not have known our customs, but the bond was started. For now, you must remain with us, until we decide what to do. Hayes blinked. You mean I'm being detained? Observed, Corell corrected. You are not a prisoner. But you are no longer a guest either, well, Hayes muttered. That's one way to make a first impression. Later, in a quiet chamber aboard the ship, Hayes sat on a soft bench and held his head in his hands. I touched an alien on the forehead, and now I'm basically married. He whispered. A soft beep came from the door. Corell stepped in, her robes now simpler, her expression unreadable. I have been asked to explain things to you, she said. You may ask your questions. Hayes looked up. Okay, first question. Am I in big trouble? No, but the council is confused. They see this as either a great insult or a great opportunity. Opportunity? Few outsiders ever begin the bond, none by accident. Some believe it means fate has chosen you. Hayes chuckled nervously. Fate has terrible aim. Corell blinked. You are strange, Jordan. Hayes, but perhaps not unpleasant. There was a small moment of silence. Then she added, Next time, do not press anything glowing between someone's horns. Deal, Hayes said. Lesson learned. Jordan Hayes sat on a soft silver couch inside a strange round room. The walls glowed gently. The air was warm. It smelled like metal and flowers. He looked around. No windows. No doors he could see. Just one blinking panel on the wall that beeped. Now and then? Well, he muttered. At least they didn't throw me in a space jail. After his accidental proposal to Ambassador Curlby, touching the glowing spot between her horns, he had been escorted here. Not by guards with guns, by serious-looking Volcar attendants who politely asked him to follow. They called it a guest observation room. To Hayes, it felt more like a fancy alien hotel room with invisible locks. Suddenly the wall shimmered and opened. Corell stepped in. Her long violet robes were gone. She now wore a simpler gray outfit, and her long silver hair was tied back. Her horns still curved proudly over her head, and the glow between them flickered softly. She carried a thin device in her hand. You are comfortable? She asked calmly. I mean, I haven't been disintegrated, so... Yeah, I guess. Corell blinked. We do not disintegrate guests. Good to know. Hayes gave a small smile. Thanks for not being mad. I was surprised, she said, walking to a chair across from him. Not angry? I really didn't know. I thought it was just a respectful greeting. You did not read the full briefing. I skimmed it. Hayes admitted. There were a lot of pages. Corell tilted her head slightly. In Volcar culture, the space between the horns is sacred. It holds a connection point between the mind and the spirit. Only bonded partners are allowed to touch that place. Not even family. Hayes swallowed. So I skipped all the way past hello and straight to space marriage? Corell narrowed her glowing eyes. Not exactly marriage, but a bond was started. Our minds are now lightly linked. It will grow stronger and less broken. Hayes sat back. So how do we break it? There is a process, but it is not easy. While Corell explained, Hayes tried to understand everything. The Volcar bond was old. From ancient times, it was a connection of trust and thought. If completed, it allowed two people to sense each other's emotions, sometimes even thoughts. But if it was not wanted, it could be stopped if both people agreed and passed the 3 proving tasks. You must face the trials with me, Corell said. We must show that our bond is not meant to be. What kind of trials? They test body, mind, and spirit? That sounds dramatic. They are sacred and public. Oh boy. Back on Earth, chaos was growing, Commander. Lou paced inside the human diplomatic center. Screens showed the Volcar ship floating peacefully above Earth. But everyone inside the control room was tense. Ambassador Tamora spoke to the others. If we don't fix this, Earth could lose all trust with the Volcar Union. Hayes made a mistake, Liu said. But he might also be our best hope. The Volcar haven't kicked us out. They're curious about him. It gives us a chance, or it gives them a reason to study him like a bug. Either way, Liu said, we need to talk to him. Hayes soon got his wish. Curl returned the next day with 2 attendants. Your leaders want to speak with you. Hey, we will allow it. In a clean communication room, Hayes saw Commander Liu on the screen. His face looked sharp and serious. Lieutenant Hayes, Liu said. How are you holding up? Not dead, if that's what you mean. We've been speaking with Volcar translators. They say you started a bonding ceremony. Hayes sighed. Yeah, I touched her forehead. Big mistake. What are they planning to do? They're letting me choose. Either I go through the 3 proving tasks with Curl and break the bond, or we complete it. There was a pause. You mean, stay bonded forever? I shrugged. I don't think it means we're married, but it's close. Leo nodded slowly. Well, that's not our decision. It's yours, but choose wisely. The whole planet's watching. Hayes gave a small, tired smile. No pressure, huh? That night, Hayes sat in the quiet room, thinking. He looked up when Curl entered again. I spoke with your leaders, she said. They fear what will happen. I don't blame them. Churl sat beside him. I am not angry about the touch. But this bond, it is serious for my people. Some of them think it is fate. Others are insulted. They want us to undo it quickly, and you, Hayes asked. Curl looked at him. I am curious. Hayes chuckled. That's better than furious. You're strange. Small, soft, but you are not afraid. Even now, you joke. That's what humans do. We make jokes when we're scared. Curl was quiet for a moment, then she asked, Will you do the trials? Hayes thought. He had made a mistake. A big one. But maybe he could fix it. Right way. Not by hiding, but by showing that humans take responsibility even when they mess up. I'll do it, he said. Let's break the bond the proper way. Curl nodded once. Then we begin tomorrow. The first trial was called The Path of Balance. It took place in a giant room with floating stones and shifting platforms. The goal was to reach the far side without falling. The gravity kept changing. Some parts pulled up, others pulled sideways. Hayes looked at the impossible room. Is this a game or a death trap? Curl said calmly, as they started. Hayes almost fell 5 times in the first minute. But he noticed something. When the gravity shifted, the glowing spot between Corral's horns also changed color. He pointed. Wait, your horns? They predict the gravity shifts? Curl blinked in surprise. Yes, that is how I see the path, and we do it together, Hayes said. You lead, I follow. Using her signals, Hayes jumped, ran, and slid across the floating platforms. Once he lost balance, but Curl reached out and caught him. You were heavier than you look, she said. Thanks, Hayes said, panting. That's muscle, I think. I reached the end together. The Volcar, watching from above, clapped slow but respectful. That night, they sat on a quiet balcony under the stars. You did well, Curl said. You saved me. Twice. You followed orders. That is rare for humans. Hayes smiled. We follow some, we break others. Curl looked at the stars. Tomorrow is the second task. The trial of memory. Let me guess. We relive our worst moments. Close, Curl said. We must see each other's minds. Share pain. Share truth. Hayes blinked. I didn't study for that one. Corral's voice was soft. No one can prepare, but we will face it together. They sat in silence. Somewhere in the distance, the stars continued to shine, watching a human and a Volcar, 2 very different beings brought together by a strange accident. And now, walking side by side, the next morning, Jordan Hayes woke up feeling nervous. He had faced alien gravity traps the day before. Now it was time for the second task, the trial of memory. Curl stood waiting for him in a quiet white chamber. She looked calm, but something in her eyes was different, less serious, softer. Are you ready? She asked. Hayes took a deep breath. Not really. Let's do it anyway. She gave a slow nod and motioned him to the center of the room. A low platform with 2 seats waited for them. Strange, glowing wires hung above like silver vines. The seats faced each other, close enough that their knees almost touched. Curl sat first. Hayes followed. 2 attendants stepped forward and gently placed glowing circles on their temples. A humming sound began, low and slow, like a heartbeat. Curl spoke, her voice steady. "This trial links our memories. You will see mine, I will see yours. It will be real. It may feel like a dream, but it is truth." Hayes nodded. "So I guess no secrets then." "None," she agreed. The lights above them flashed hand. The world around them faded away. Hayes opened his eyes and found himself standing on a red battlefield. Strange sky above, smoke in the air, alien shouts echoed from every side. Beside him, a younger Curl stood with armor on her shoulders and fire. In her eyes, she was leading a squad of Volcar warriors. Blaster bolts zipped past her horns. Hayes ducked. "Whoa. This is one of your memories." "Yes," her voice echoed in the air. "This was my first battle. We defended our colony from raiders." He watched as young Curl led a charge. She shouted. Orders pulled a fallen warrior to safety. And stood firm, even when injured. "You were brave," Hayes said. "I was afraid," Curl replied. The scene changed. Now they stood in a quiet room with a silver coffin. The mood was cold. Still, a hornless elder Volcar lay inside. Curl's younger self stood silently, her face hard, but her hands shaking. "My mother," she said quietly. "She died 2 days after that battle. She did not want me to be a warrior." Hayes looked at her. She'd be proud. "You saved." Liv's Curl was quiet for a long moment. Then the memory faded. Now the scene changed again. This time, it was Earth. Curl stood in a busy human city street. Crowds moved fast. Buildings stretched to the sky. The memory shifted Hayes's turn. A young Jordan sat on a bench, watching people walk by. He was holding a small photo. His eyes were red. "A death?" Curl asked. "My sister," Hayes said. "Car crash. I was 18. I didn't know how to talk to anyone after that." The scene shifted again. Hayes alone. In a tiny apartment, reading alien language books. "I studied alien cultures because I didn't want to be around humans anymore." Curl turned to look at him. "That is... sad." "Yeah," Hayes replied, "but it also brought me here." The lights dimmed, and the memory room faded. They were back in the white chamber. The humming stopped. The wires lifted. The silence was heavy. Curl spoke first. "Now I understand you more." Hayes nodded slowly. "Same here." No one said anything for a while. Then Curl stood. He passed the second trial. Later, in a private Volcar hall, a group of alien leaders gathered around a long table. Their horns were tall, their robes bright. They looked like judges, wise and old. "Why do we allow this trial to continue?" asked one with golden stripes. "It was an accident," said another. "The human did not mean to start the bond, but he chose the trials. He did not run away," said a third. They turned to Kirl. She stood tall. "Jordan Hayes is not a fool. He is not a soldier. But he has courage. He learns. He adapts. He is honest. And if the final task is passed," asked the lead judge, "then the bond will be broken," Curl said. There was a pause. "Unless you both decide to keep it." Curl did not answer. Meanwhile, Hayes walked with a Volcar attendant down a long hall filled with art. Carvings showed the history of the Volcar battles. Space travel, ancient stars. One wall showed 2 horned figures standing side by side. A glow between their horns lit up both faces. "Is that a bonding?" Hayes asked. "Yes," said the attendant. "That is the first ever recorded. Between 2 leaders from different tribes. It ended war." Hayes stared at it. "Wow, so the bond is more than personal?" "It's powerful." "Yes," the attendant agreed. "It is rare and sacred." That evening, Curl met Hayes in the garden of the ship. There were strange flowers that hummed when touched. Blue trees glowed softly. The stars above were brighter than Earth's. Curl walked beside him quietly. Finally, she spoke. Tomorrow is the final trial. Hayes nodded. What do I have to fight? A space dragon? She smiled, just a little. No, you must face the circle of truth. You and I must speak clearly our real thoughts. No hiding. We must choose, break the bond or complete it. Complete it? Hayes asked. Like, ... forever. Curl nodded. We become linked. Minds, thoughts, emotions. We become a unit. Hasi took a deep breath. That's big. Yes, but if we do not agree together, the bond ends. That is the rule. We're sat on a bench. Curl sat beside him. Tell me, she said, do you regret touching my horns? Hayes laughed. Oh, I regret it a lot. But I also don't. Curl raised one eyebrow. Hayes said, if I hadn't, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't have learned all this. You're smart, brave, kind, and a little scary. Curl looked at him. You are strange, clumsy, but you care. That is rare in this galaxy. They looked at each other for a long time. Then Curl stood. Rest Jordan Hayes. Tomorrow we speak truth. It's back on Earth. Commander Liu read the latest report. He passed 2 trials, he said to Ambassador. Tamora, and the final, unknown. But if he chooses to keep the bond, it changes everything, Tamora sighed. A human and a Volcar, joined by accident, now joined by choice. Maybe Liu said, or maybe not. He looked up at. The stars will know tomorrow. On the Volcar ship, in a quiet room full of light, Jordan Hayes lay in bed. He stared at the ceiling. I came here to say hello, he whispered. Now I might be tied to an alien forever. He thought about the trials, the gravity maze, shared memories. The talks with Curl, he didn't feel afraid anymore, just unsure and curious, like her. The next day began with silence. No alarms, no speeches, no crowds. Just Jordan Hayes, standing alone in the circle of truth. The room was round and white, with a glowing ring on the floor. The walls slowly pulsed with soft light, like a quiet heartbeat. Everything felt combat heavy. This was the final trial. If he and Curl chose to speak honestly, the bond could end peacefully. But if they chose to keep the bond, well, then everything would change forever. Curl entered the room from the other side. Her robes were plain again, her hair tied neatly. Her horns shone in the light. She didn't look nervous. But Hayes had started to notice the tiny signs. Her slower breathing, the small pause before she spoke. She felt it too. They stepped into the circle together, as soon as their feet touched the ring. The floor lit up blue. A deep voice spoke from the ceiling. Begin the final trial. Curl looked at Hayes. We must say our truths, without lies, without fear. He nodded. Okay. She spoke first. You are not what I expected from a human. You are not a soldier, not a leader. But you are brave in your own way. You try to understand others, even when afraid. Hayes smiled. Thanks, I think. My turn, he asked. Curl nodded. Hayes took a breath. You scared me at first. Bighorn's serious voice. Seemed like you could snap me in half. Curl blinked. I still could see. That Hayes laughed. But then I saw how smart you are. How much you care about your people. How much you hide your pain. She tilted her head. You noticed that? I saw it in the memory trial, he said. You carry a lot. You don't let it show. It's there. Curl looked down, then she said, Do you wish to keep the bond? Hayes hesitated. I don't know, he said honestly. It started by accident, but I don't regret meeting you. You're important. And ... I think we're better together than apart. Curl's eyes glowed softly. Then we are. Agreed. But before they could speak again, the floor under them shook. Boom. The walls flashed red. A loud alarm rang through the room. Hayes looked around, alarmed. What was that? A voice came through the speakers. Emergency? Hull breach in Sector 3. Intruders on board. Curl's expression turned sharp. We're under attack. Guards rushed down the silver halls. Lights flashed. Sirens echoed. Hayes followed Curl through a side door. She moved fast, her steps strong and silent. Her bodyguards joined them with energy staffs and shields. Who would attack now? Hayes asked as they turned a corner. Curl answered with a hard voice. Not outsiders. Volcar separatists. Separatists. A group that believes in Volcar purity. They hate outsiders. They hate humans. And they hate the bond. Hayes' eyes widened. You mean they came for me? Maybe for us, Curl said. They think our bond is wrong. They want to stop it with force. They reached the central command chamber. Volcar officers stood at panels, shouting reports. Curl took control. Seal off the lower halls. Protect the council. Move the guests to safety. Hayes tried to stay out of the way, but he couldn't help watching the screen. A squad of dark-armored Volcar were moving through the ship with weapons. They moved like shadows. Fast, deadly. They're heading this way, he said. Curl turned. To him, we need to leave now. But the circle of truth, our trial, it can wait. You come with me? They moved down a back corridor. Hayes followed closely, trying to keep up. His heart pounded. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't trained for battle, but right now, he was in the middle of one. As they turned a corner, a blast of heat shot past his shoulder. Zap. An enemy appeared, aiming a strange weapon. Before Hayes could scream, Curl stepped forward and blocked. The shot with her shield spun, struck the attacker with her staff, and sent him crashing into the wall. Hayes stared. K. Remind me never to make you mad. Curl didn't smile. Stay close. They fought their way through narrow halls and glowing bridges. More enemies came 3, then 5, then more. Curl's guards defended her fiercely. Hayes did his best to duck and stay alive. At one point, he saw a fallen guard's blaster. On the floor, he picked it up. Am I allowed to use this? He asked Curl. You are allowed to survive? She replied. Hayes nodded and pointed the weapon with shaking hands. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't perfect, but he was human. And that meant he would try. Finally, they reached a locked room with reinforced walls. Inside was a small escape, pod silver and round like a space egg. Curl turned to him. Get in. Hayes frowned. What? Why me? They want you, she said. If they capture you, Earth suffers. I'm not leaving you behind. You must. That is my duty to protect my bond partner. Hayes stared at her, but we haven't even decided if we're staying bonded. Curl looked at him with a strange, soft expression. I already decided. Hayes took a slow breath. Then, I'm staying. Before she could argue, the wall behind them exploded. Smoke filled the room. The separatists stormed in 10 of them. Their leader stepped forward, horn tips painted black. His eyes burned with anger. Curl, he growled. You shame us? You link with a lesser creature. Hayes raised the blaster. Lesser. Hey, that's rude. The leader ignored him. Break the bond or we will end it for you. Curl stepped forward. This human stood with me in every trial. He risked his life to protect me. If that is weakness, then I choose it. The enemy raised his weapon. Hayes fired first. Zap. The blast hit the leader's shoulder. He staggered Curl's. Guards moved fast. In seconds, the attackers were surrounded. More Volcar soldiers arrived. The fight was over. Hours later, the alarm stopped. The halls went quiet. The council called an emergency meeting. Curl and Hayes stood before them. Tired and bruised but alive, the lead counselor spoke. You have completed the final trial. In your own way, another counselor added. You protected each other, you spoke the truth. And you showed unity in the face of violence. The lead judge looked at them both. What is your choice? Curl looked at Hayes. He looked at her, and they said, at the same time, we choose to keep the bond. The room filled with quiet gasps. Then, slowly, the council stood and clapped. Slow, powerful, respectful. Later, as the sun rose over Earth's skies, Hayes sat beside Curl in the command room of a new ship, a joint mission ship, symbol of peace between humans and Volcar. He looked at her, smiling. So, ... we're bonded now? Yes, Curl said. You are now my mind partner. Hayes grinned. Cool. Do I get a badge or something? No, she replied. But you get to annoy me for the rest of our lives? Hayes laughed. The ship moved forward, stars shining ahead. Together. It faced trials, memories, and war. And they had chosen each other not by accident anymore, but by truth. The starship Unity spark floated silently above Earth. Its silver body glowed softly in the morning light. A mix of Volcar strength and human design. 2 flags waved gently inside its main command room. One from Earth, one from the Volcar Union. Inside, Jordan Hayes sat in the captain's chair. He had never imagined himself sitting in Woon, especially not next to a tall, horned alien who could break walls with one hand. But here he was. And beside him, Ambassador Curl stood with her arms crossed and her usual serious expression. Is it strange, Hayes asked, that we accidentally created a new alliance? Just because I poked your forehead? Curl raised an eyebrow. It was not a poke. It was a full ceremonial press. Hayes grinned. Details. They both turned as the communication screen lit up. Commander Leo's face appeared, calm but focused. Captain Hayes. Ambassador Curl, Leo said. The Galactic Peace Assembly is gathering today. They want you both to speak about the new human-Volcar bond. Curl nodded. We are ready. Hayes leaned back. More ready than I was when this all started. 3 hours later, the main council room aboard Unity Spark was filled with beings from across the galaxy. Tall creatures with wings, small glowing shapes floating in groups, robots with blinking eyes, and many others. Everyone had come to hear one thing. How did a simple human and a powerful Volcar ambassador go from accident ... to alliance? Hayes stood. Behind the podium, his palms were sweaty, but he smiled anyway. Hello, everyone, he began. I'm Jordan Hayes, former language officer, current captain, accidental horn presser, and now, apparently, a galactic diplomat. Some aliens blinked. A few chuckled. Curl stood beside him, her arms still crossed. I came to the Volcar ship thinking I'd just shake hands, Hayes continued. Instead, I touched a sacred spot on someone's forehead and nearly started a war. More soft laughter. But instead of fighting, we talked, we learned, we shared stories. We went through strange trials. We faced danger, and in the end, we realized something important. He turned to Coral. She gave a small nod. We're different, but not too different, Hayes said. Humans are curious and emotional. The Volcar are proud and careful, but both of us want peace. We want connection, and maybe we needed each other more than we knew. Curl stepped forward. Her voice was calm and powerful. This bond was not planned, but it was true. We saw each other's minds, chose trust over fear, and now we offer that trust to the rest of the galaxy. She paused. The Volcar Union and the human nations of Earth now stand as one voice in the stars. The council room erupted in applause. Some cheered, others nodded in agreement. A few aliens looked confused, but curious. Hayes looked at Curl. I think they liked it. Curl gave the tiniest smile. You did not embarrass us. That is enough. Back in their private quarters, Hayes collapsed on the couch. That was harder than fighting off separatists. He said. Curl sat beside him, folding her long legs calmly. You are learning. He looked at her. You ever stop being so ... perfect? I'm not perfect, she said. Okay, he said with a grin. Only 98%. She rolled her eyes just slightly. Now that we're bonded, Hayes asked, what exactly does that mean long term? Curl looked thoughtful. It means we will feel each other's emotions sometimes. When you are scared, I may feel it. When I am angry, you may know. That's already happening, Hayes said. When you glared at that grumpy fish ambassador, Today, I got this weird chill down my spine. I was deciding whether to bite him, Curl said calmly. Hayes blinked. Double quotes, joke. Right. She looked at him. He shifted uncomfortably. Right? 2 days later, Earth held its biggest joint celebration in years. People gathered in cities across the planet. Lights flashed. Fireworks exploded. Speeches were made in many languages. On the big screen in New York, Corral's image appeared. Some people gasped, others clapped, children pointed and laughed with joy. She began to speak. I once believed humans were small and reckless. People laughed, but I now know that they are full of heart. They are brave, even when afraid. And their chaos. It's often full of life. We became part of the galaxy. Meanwhile, inside the Unity Spark, Hayes stood on the top observation deck. He looked out at the stars, sipping a warm drink. Curl joined him. This is just the beginning, she said. Of what? Of many new journeys, new dangers, new questions. The galaxy is big and full of surprises. Hayes nodded, like sacred glowing forehead spots. Curl gave him a sideways look. You will never live that down. Hayes smiled. I know, but maybe I don't want to. She looked at him. Why? Because it brought me here, he said. To you. To this. Curl was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You are growing, Jordan Hayes. Not taller, but wiser. He grinned. I'll take it. In the weeks that followed, the Unity Spark began its first mission. A peaceful tour of nearby systems. Sharing knowledge and culture. Humans and Volcar worked side by side. Curl trained human officers in Volcar customs. Hayes taught Volcar how to play chess, eat pizza, and watch old sci-fi movies. One Volcar warrior became deeply confused by a movie about aliens invading Earth. He kept asking, but why would you film this? There were small problems. Of course, a translator device exploded after hearing 5 languages at once. A human tried to pet a Volcar's horn again. They were quickly corrected, and someone brought a pet Earth cat on board, which kept sneaking into engine rooms. But overall, it worked. The bond between humans and Volcar held strong. One night, Giza was walking back to his room when a Volcar officer stopped him. Captain Hayes, the officer said, there is a new ambassador visiting. Tomorrow. She has horns. Hayes froze. Please tell me there's a rule book now. There is, the officer said. It starts with, do not press anything glowing between the horns. Hayes laughed. Good, I really don't want to accidentally. Get bonded again. He walked into his room and found Curl there reading a human book. She looked up, ready for tomorrow. Always, he said, as long as you're there too. She stood. Then let's explore the stars together. And they did. 2 beings from different worlds, joined by accident, held together by choice, bound not just by ceremony, but by friendship, respect, something new rising between their people. The galaxy would never be the same again, and somewhere, far away, stars laughed softly at the strangest first contact story ever told.